On January 7th, David Bennett woke up just like he had every day before. However, this time was slightly different because he had a new heart. Mr. Bennett was waking up from the first successful surgery in which a pig heart was transplanted into a human. Now, most of us don't have to think about organ transplants that often, which is probably a good thing. However, transplants have become an integral part of medical science. According to the website for the United Network for Organ Sharing, last accessed October 8th, 2022, almost 30,000 organ transplants have already taken place in the United States just this year. These procedures have given new opportunities to patients both young and old, whose conditions were previously seen as being untreatable. Mr. Bennett's story is particularly noteworthy because his procedure was the culmination of decades of research on cross-species transplantation, otherwise known as xenotransplantation. Xenotransplantation is on the verge of revolutionizing medical science, so it's important that we understand this process by first looking at how humans began to use animal products medically, before then looking at how research has culminated in modern xenotransplantation procedures, before finally looking to the future and attempting to predict how all of this work will be applied in the coming decades. Xenotransplantation isn't quite as modern as some may expect. In fact, the first documented medical procedure involving animal components took place all the way back in France in 1667, according to a January 2017 article from the Smithsonian Magazine. The medical pioneer in question here was Jean-Baptiste Denis, the personal physician to King Louis XIV. Denis transfused lamb blood into 4 young men, 2 of whom died very shortly after their procedures. These negative outcomes led to such procedures being banned in France, as well as effectively becoming medical taboo for the next few centuries. Explorations into xenotransplantation picked up again in the mid-20th century, when doctors began to realize that the reason for so many previous failures was the fact that the human immune system was rejecting the foreign organs. According to a February 2020 article from the Association of American Medical Colleges, doctors started to use immunosuppressive drugs when transplanting primate livers, kidneys, and hearts into humans. These patients had the chance of surviving anywhere from just 2 hours to even several months after these experimental procedures. Then, as explained in a February 2022 statement from the NYU Langone Transplant Institution, porcine, or pig, organs started to replace primate organs in these experimental procedures. This is because porcine organs are more similar in size to human organs than primates are. Also, due to having more genetic differences from humans than primates do, pig organs are less likely to transfer harmful diseases during such procedures, which makes their long-term success much more likely. Now that we've looked at xenotransplantation from its earliest applications, we're ready to dive into the modern work that's being done with porcine organs. Modern procedures involving porcine components have had increasingly successful results that cause doctors to have an optimistic outlook on the future of xenotransplantation. An article published in their Journal of Tissue Engineering in February 2016 discusses the effectiveness of using porcine acellular lung matrix in healing damaged tissue in rats. Cellular matrices are basically mesh-like patches that surgeons use when they're finishing a procedure. The matrix acts as a helping hand for the afflicted area by supporting the growth of new cells, and the goal for the procedure using the porcine matrix in rats was to imitate how currently used cellular matrices speed up the healing process in humans. The main difference between the experimental porcine matrix and standard matrices is that the porcine one was made from a pig's lung membrane, and standard ones are typically made from human skin tissue. At the end of the study, the researchers concluded that the porcine matrix not only had more cellular density, but also supported the growth of more blood vessels than the standard one did, both of which are optimal traits for a cellular matrix. Another modern medical innovation involving porcine components is porcine fibrin sealant. Fibrin sealant is a liquid that is applied to wounds after injury, and it basically acts as a liquid bandage. It's also meant to speed up the healing process. An article published in the Journal of Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine in June 2020 describes an experiment in which porcine fibrin sealant was used to treat flesh wounds in rats, and was shown to speed up the healing process more so than traditional sealant did. The future of xenotransplantation became increasingly bright when doctors were successful in transplanting the first porcine heart into the aforementioned David Bennett in January 2022. NBC News published an article describing his story in July 2022. The procedure went smoothly, and Mr. Bennett was able to survive with the porcine heart for 2 more months before passing away. Mr. Bennett's cause of death is the most important takeaway from this medical venture. He died because his body ultimately ended up being too weak and the porcine heart failed. However, his body didn't reject the foreign heart. Since organ rejection wasn't a part of his cause of death, the doctors considered the procedure a success, which means that xenotransplantation is not only medically viable, but also that there is tons of room for improvement so that similar procedures can continue to save lives. We've looked at xenotransplantation from its earliest origins and what's being done with it today. So now, let's look to the future and attempt to predict how all of this research will be applied in the coming years. Current xenotransplantation research can be seen as an investment in the humans of the future because it could be the key to solving a huge problem in the medical field: a shortage of donor organs, especially kidneys. According to organdonor.gov, last accessed October 10th, 2022, there were 90,483 patients on the waiting list for a kidney transplant in 2021. Only 27,670, or about 27%, of these individuals actually received a transplant. Also in 2021, researchers at the University of Alabama at Birmingham were able to transplant pig kidneys into brain-dead humans, according to a January 2022 article from the Scientific American. The article explains that these kidneys were able to perform their vital functions until the end of the experiment. It also explains that the doctors at the university are currently in the process of receiving the necessary green light from the FDA in order to begin clinical trials with porcine kidneys in non-brain-dead humans. This implies that xenotransplantation truly has the potential to meet the demand for kidneys and other donor organs that will inevitably be greater in the future. Furthermore, many researchers are optimistic that the techniques currently being used in xenotransplantation can be applied to other areas of medical research. A July 2022 release from the Mayo Clinic explains that animals that are being used in these experimental xenotransplantation procedures are genetically modified in a way that reduces the risk of aversive effects from these procedures. These modifications make it more difficult for the recipient's body to recognize that the new organ is actually from a different species. This makes the chance of an organ rejection much less likely, and after the positive results of David Bennett's procedure, many doctors think that this technique could be applied to other areas of medicine, such as stem cell transplants. The Mayo Clinic article explains that animal stem cells could be genetically modified and then transplanted into humans to aid in the regeneration of damaged tissue. This application of stem cell technology, plus the reduced chance of an organ rejection and the possibility of having more donor organs to work with, means that xenotransplantation truly has the potential to change the medical field as we know it. From early experiments in animal blood transfusions to a man literally surviving with a porcine heart, xenotransplantation has undoubtedly progressed in leaps and bounds since its beginning. Today, we looked at how humans first began to use animal products medically with very few successes at first. Before then, improving our techniques so that we could perform modern procedures with porcine components, before finally looking to the future and attempting to predict how this research can be applied in other areas, such as stem cell transplants. Thanks to patients like David Bennett, the use of porcine organs is becoming increasingly normalized in the medical field and will save countless lives in the future.